On Kilmer Street, Christmas was treated like a shared responsibility. Every December, the same routine played out. Garlands stretched from porch to porch. Extension cords snaked across frosted lawns. By the second week, the street glowed at night like it had been dipped in gold. People liked to say it felt safer that way, brighter, warmer, unified. At the center of it all was the annual Christmas dinner. A long folding table set up in the largest driveway. Everyone brought something. Casseroles, roasted meat, bottles wrapped in paper towels. Children ran between houses while the adults drank and compared stories they'd already told 100 times. There was only one house that never participated. It sat at the very end of the street, slightly angled away, half hidden by dead trees. Years earlier, a fire had swallowed it in the middle of the night. A family of 4 was believed to have died inside. The structure was rebuilt, but no one ever moved back in. No decorations. No lights. No visitors. People stopped talking about it after a while. The house became part of the background, like something you learn not to look at for too long. But that year was different. A few days before Christmas, a woman across the street noticed a wreath nailed to the front door. It wasn't festive, just a ring of dry pine unevenly hung. No one claimed responsibility. Someone suggested a prank. Someone else laughed and said maybe the ghosts were decorating early. On Christmas Eve, another neighbor swore they saw a dim light flicker behind the upstairs curtains. By Christmas morning, there were footprints in the snow. They led from the back of the house to the street, and nowhere else. Still, the dinner went on. People mentioned the house in lowered voices, the way you talk about something you don't want to make real. Someone said the cold was playing tricks on them. Someone else said maybe a squatter had broken in. Nobody walked over to check. As the night deepened, the smells started. At first, no one could place it. Something rich, fatty, like meat left too long in a pan. It drifted intermittently, carried by the wind from the end of the street. A man joked that someone overcooked their roast. But the smell didn't come from the table. It came from the dark house. A few people noticed the front door was cracked open now. Just a few inches. Enough for the light inside to spill across the snow in a thin yellow blade. That was when one of the older neighbors quietly left the dinner. His name was Harold. He lived 3 houses down from the burned one. He told people he wasn't feeling well. Most didn't notice him go. They noticed him when they heard screaming. It started as shouting. Then panic tore through the gathering. People ran toward the sound, slipping in the snow, arms full of half-forgotten plates. The door of the dark house was wide open. Inside, the walls were scorched black beneath fresh paint. Furniture sat exactly where it had years ago, warped and damaged, never replaced. And in the living room, standing in a loose line, were 4 figures. They were thin. Painfully thin. Their clothes hung from them like borrowed fabric. Their faces were pale, eyes sunk deep, lips cracked and shaking as if smiling hurt. They weren't burned. They weren't ghosts. They were alive. A woman at the front whispered, "You kept the lights on for us." No one moved. Police reports later confirmed the truth no one wanted to hear. The fire years ago hadn't killed the family. It trapped them. A renovation error sealed the basement room they fled into. The exits collapsed. Smoke never reached them. They screamed for days. No one heard. Except Harold. He lived close enough to hear faint knocking at night. Scraping. Sounds he told himself were animals. Pipes. His imagination. But when the knocking came back the following Christmas, he answered. He never freed them. He said he was scared. Afraid no one would believe him. Afraid he'd be blamed. Instead, every Christmas night after the dinner ended, he brought leftovers. Small plates. Wrapped carefully. Slid through a broken foundation vent. Enough to survive. Never enough to escape. For years, the family watched the neighborhood celebrate through a crack in the wall. They learned routines. Names. Traditions. This Christmas, Harold didn't come. He died of a stroke 2 weeks earlier. And they were tired of waiting. When police arrived, the family didn't resist. One of them kept asking where Harold was. Another asked why the decorations were brighter this year. As they were let out, the oldest child turned back toward the street. Toward the houses glowing with warmth. "You ate while we starved," he said quietly. After that night, the Christmas dinner stopped. Decorations came down early. The house at the end of the street sits empty again. But sometimes on cold December nights, the neighbors swear they smell food burning. And no one dares look to see where it's coming from. It started snowing just before dusk on Christmas Eve, the kind of heavy, wet snow that silences roads and makes headlights feel useless. The woman, her name was Mara, had been living alone in the house for just over a year. Long enough for the silence to feel permanent, but not long enough to feel normal. Her partner had died the previous winter. A sudden accident. Everyone said it was no one's fault. The house still smelled faintly of pine cleaner and old memories. When she heard the knock, she assumed it was the wind. But then it came again. Slow. Careful. Human. On the porch stood a family of 4. A man and woman in their 40s, a teenage boy, and a little girl clutching a torn red mitten. Their car had slid off the road down the hill. No signal. No nearby houses, they said. The snow was getting worse. Mara hesitated. She thought of every warning she'd ever heard. Then she looked at the girls shaking hands and stepped aside. They thanked her by name before she introduced herself. She didn't correct them. She assumed she had said it already. Inside, they removed their coats without being told where to put them. The man hung them on hooks behind the kitchen door, hooks that weren't visible from the entryway. The woman guided the children toward the living room and told them to stay away from the room at the end of the hall. Mara felt a small chill at that. The door to that room was closed. Always closed. They sat together while snow tapped softly against the windows. Mara made tea. The father thanked her again and said, "You've kept it just like it was." She smiled politely, unsure what he meant. As they talked, strange details surfaced. The mother mentioned a loose stair that Mara avoided stepping on. The boy asked if the attic light still flickered when it was cold. The little girl hummed quietly to herself. It took Mara a moment to realize the tune. It was the song her partner used to hum when he cooked. Not a Christmas song. Not something from the radio. Just a habit. She asked where they were from. The man said, "Here. A long time ago. They refused food." The woman apologized gently and said they didn't eat much anymore. When Mara gestured for them to sit closer to the fireplace, the mother shook her head too quickly. "Not there," she said. "That room doesn't like guests." Mara laughed nervously, then stopped when she realized none of them were smiling. Around 10 that night, the storm worsened. Mara suggested they stay until morning. The father hesitated, then nodded, as if agreeing to something that had already been decided. The little girl wandered down the hallway while Mara fetched blankets. When Mara realized she was gone, panic flared. She rushed after her, stopping short when she saw the child standing in front of the closed door at the end of the hall. The room. The girl pressed her mittened hand to the wood. "This is where it happened," she said softly. Mara pulled her back sharply, her heart pounding. "You shouldn't go near that room." The child looked up at her, eyes far too old. That's what he said too. That night, after the children lay quietly on the couch, the adults finally spoke plainly. The mother told Mara that they hadn't been stranded. They had come when the house called them. It always did, once a year. The father said they used to live here decades ago, before the renovations, before the sealed records, before the fire that never officially happened. There had been another family. Another Christmas. Another secret. They were murdered in that room at the end of the hall. The man who helped cover it up had been young then. Drunk. Desperate. He hadn't planned to kill anyone. He was only supposed to scare them. When it went wrong, he told the police a different story. And they believed him. He grew up. He fell in love. He bought the house without ever realizing why it felt familiar. Mara's hands trembled as understanding settled in. Her partner had never talked about his youth. Never about that Christmas. The mother leaned forward. "We don't come for revenge," she said. "We just come to be remembered." The father added, "But this year we were invited." Mara asked what would happen when morning came. The father looked at the closed door. "We go back where we belong." Snow fell silently outside as they stood together in the darkened house. When dawn finally broke, the family was gone. No footprints on the porch. No coats on the hooks. Only the door at the end of the hall stood open for the first time since Mara had lived there. Inside, the room was empty, except for 4 faint handprints on the wall, pressed into the dust as if someone had just leaned there, waiting to come home next Christmas. It was Christmas morning when he walked through the door. His son's heart had barely caught up with the shock. Just 3 days earlier, the police had been at the door. They'd told him his father was gone. They'd found him, or at least what they believed was him, out in the woods, frozen in the snow. And now here he was, alive. He looked exhausted. Gaunt, pale, shivering despite the heat inside the house. But he smiled, that same old crooked smile his son remembered from childhood. "Merry Christmas," he said, his voice calm, almost casual, as if nothing had happened at all. Neighbors passing by on the sidewalk stopped mid-step. Some stared openly, eyebrows knitted. Others quickly turned away, muttering excuses about being late for family gatherings. Something about him unsettled them, though nobody could say exactly what. Inside he moved carefully. He avoided the mirrors. He avoided the bright overhead lights. Even the smell of food seemed to bother him. He hovered in the shadows, leaning against walls, watching, breathing shallowly. His son tried to make conversation, offered coffee, breakfast, even his favorite pie, but the father declined every time. Hours passed. The tension in the house grew. The son noticed subtle things. The way the father never fully turned to face anyone, how his eyes occasionally glinted with a strange light in the corners, like he was noticing things nobody else could see. Then came the first knock. It was the police. They didn't look angry. They didn't look relieved. They looked confused. "Can we talk?" one of them said, glancing at the father who had frozen mid-step. The son's stomach dropped. What's going on?" The officer held up a printout. Snow-covered footprints, leaving the scene where they'd supposedly found his father's body, leading away from the site straight toward the house. I don't understand," the son stammered. "He's here. He came back." The father said nothing. Just stepped back into the shadows, avoiding the officer's gaze. By nightfall the house was quiet. The family lights flickered softly through the windows, casting long shadows across the living room. The father sat silently in the corner, hands folded, knees drawn up. Occasionally he'd glance at the son, and for a moment, a hint of something familiar, something human, flashed in his eyes. Then it was gone. Around midnight the son woke to a sound. Footsteps, soft, deliberate, dragging something across the hardwood floor. He got up, heart pounding, and peeked into the living room. The father, or what looked like him, was gone. The shadows were thicker now, as if the corners of the room had deepened into black holes. And in those shadows something moved. Not quite human. Too tall, too thin. Its movements were jerky, deliberate, like it was learning the motions of a man it had never been. The son's voice barely made a sound. "Dad." A laugh came back. Not his father's laugh. It was hollow. Echoing. Wrong. And then he understood. The father had survived, yes. But something else had followed him home, something that had climbed out of the snow, hidden in the cold. Something that wore his father's body now. Something that didn't just want to survive, it wanted to replace. Christmas was the perfect night. A night of lights, of doors left unlocked, of hearts open to joy. A night when people are most vulnerable. And this thing, it had learned to wear him perfectly. To walk like him, speak like him, smile like him. But it wasn't him. Not anymore. By dawn the house was silent. The son didn't see the father leave. He didn't see him sleep. But the neighbors reported seeing him outside, shivering in the frost, staring into their windows. Watching. Waiting. And every year it comes back. Not for gifts. Not for food. But for the ones who let it in. The ones who believed it was safe to welcome him home. The ones who didn't know the thing wearing his father's face had already learned how to be him better than he ever could. And that's the part that makes people never forget. The part that lingers in your chest when you wake up in the middle of the night, hearing the wind against your windows. Because the father, the real one, was gone. But Christmas, that thing? It always comes back. If you enjoyed these stories and want more like it, make sure you subscribe, turn on notifications, and drop a comment telling what kind of horror story you want next.